Super exciting for us. Yep. So first of all, I wanted to, before I introduce our wonderful speaker tonight, I wanted to put out a few thanks. So this as the speaker series is funded by the LACC Foundations. By the way, if any of you are students or whoever and you need help, please, or anything you need, short-term, anything, please take advantage of them. They're here to help you and just they're a great resource. I also wanted to thank our wonderful Elizabeth Prager, who is doing tech, did the beautiful poster, and she's going to be looking over the chat and doing the question and answer part. If you don't see me at the end, it's just because I have to teach tonight starting at 7. I am the chair of the Visual and Media Arts Department, and we consist of art history, animation, journalism, and photography. So we're a pretty big group. I want to now introduce our wonderful speaker, Dr. Ed.D. It is such a pleasure and we're so honored. So we're thrilled to welcome Dr. Ed.D. to our lecture series today, and has been a broadcast journalist for more than 19 years and works as a producer. Presently, he's producing the morning news for Good Day LA on KTTV in Los Angeles. Before that, he was a supervising producer at KCPQ-TV in Seattle, where he oversaw coverage decisions for morning newscasts, story placement, live events, and breaking news strategy. In addition to producing, Dr. Day teaches journalism and mass media courses for various colleges and universities, including this semester for us, been a beloved professor. He holds a BA in Film and Electronic Arts from California State University, Long Beach, MA in Organizational Leadership from City University of Seattle, and a doctorate in Organizational Leadership, also from City University of Seattle. And most exciting for us tonight, Dr. Day just finished co-producing the documentary When Magic Shocked the World, and is running in a limited series for Fox. The documentary is an in-depth look at the history of the moment when Magic announced he was HIV positive and retired from basketball, and how far we've come in raising awareness of HIV/AIDS. The series also highlights Magic's contributions to jobs and economic development in underserved communities. We are so honored to welcome Dr. Ed.D. to our series today.
Well, thank you very, very much. Can you hear me okay? Just want to make sure you can hear me just fine. Is that right? We're good. Okay. Well, thank you for the introduction. I really appreciate that. I'm so happy to be here tonight. And I just want to kick things off by just giving you a more background as to what I've been doing and who I am. Yeah, I went to college in Long Beach, got my bachelor's degree. I've been working in television since I was a junior in college. It's pretty amazing how my journey has taken place. And so I left college with a BA, and I went to work in a newsroom here in LA. I was at Channel 4 News in Los Angeles for about 4 years. I took a job at the assignment desk, and I taught myself how to write, became a writer part-time, and you know, I did that for about 4 years. But my ultimate goal was to be a producer. I've always wanted to be a producer. You know, I learned early that producers get to make really important decisions. You know, producers, you know, some people would say producers call the shots. And so as I began my journey in the business, I noticed that producers made content decisions, and they were the ones who got to decide what belonged in the show. The official term, and this is a term we use in journalism, you know, they're the gatekeepers. You know, we're the gatekeepers of information. So I left LA to go work in San Diego. I spent 2 years producing news and writing news in San Diego for 3 stations down there. But in this business, you got to sometimes you got to move around from market to market. And so after San Diego, I got offered a job in Seattle. So I went to produce morning news in Seattle. I spent 10 years at the NBC station. I spent 5 years producing news at the Fox station. So I was in Seattle for 15 years producing, and I did some teaching as well. I started teaching not long after I got to Seattle, and now I'm back home. LA is home. California is home. I went to high school in Chino. Um, I live in the IE now, so I'm very happy to be home. Fox 11 made an offer last year. I spent 2 years trying to get to LA, and it was quite the process. It's not easy coming back to such a big city or a big market like Los Angeles, but um, I got the job and I'm back home, and as soon as I got here, I hit the ground running. I currently produce the 7 o'clock hour of Good Day LA, which involves assigning reporters to stories, writing stories, writing what we call teases. Whenever you hear someone say coming up next, or still to come, those are called teases, and so I write those as well. And I'm a key player when it comes to what goes into the newscast. LA is a big city. There's a lot happening. We have a lot of counties. There's a lot going on in our region, and so every morning I have really important conversations with a team of producers and managers and reporters about what stories are most important today. What information do we need to get to people in order for them to function and make important decisions about their lives and their families. And those are not always easy conversations. We don't always agree on what needs to be covered, but it's a really fun job. And so earlier this year, I had the pleasure of producing a docu series about the death of George Floyd. One thing that television stations do is, we plan ahead, right? So um, we look several months ahead of time as to how we're going to tell a story. For example, I mean, we're already thinking about what to do for the January 6th Capitol attack anniversary, right? We're coming up on 1 year since the attack at the Capitol. So how do we cover that? Who do we talk to? What interviews do we book? What stories do we tell? So last year we knew that the death of George Floyd, the 1 year since his death was approaching. We knew that that was going to be an important day. In fact, the trial for Derek Chauvin was happening almost around the same time as the anniversary. So I was fortunate enough to work on a project that involved producing a series of episodes reflecting on the death of George Floyd, um, the protests that followed in the days after his death. What did those protests look like in LA? Obviously, there were some violent protests, there were some peaceful protests. And I'm gonna show you a web page here in a moment of what we did. And so um, that production of that docu series actually started months ago, months before the anniversary. Um, we lined up. In fact, I'll just share now. We lined up guests, key people to talk to. Um, you know, we we started by hopefully you can see my screen. we started by making a list, and I'm just going to walk you through the process of what it's like to produce something like this, because this may have been the most complicated project I've produced in my 20 career in news. I mean, producing an hour-long newscast, I can almost do that in my sleep because I've done it so many times. But when it comes to producing a docu-series, right, with some of these major issues, it's very complicated. So we started by making a list of who are the important voices, right? Who can we talk to? You know, looking back on that day, who were the most important people, the most relevant people, who were the key stakeholders around that time? So we reached out to police and law enforcement officers. We talked to civil rights leaders. We even tracked down some of the protesters who were on the news that week. You know, some of the folks, there were many people out there trying to keep the peace, and so we were able to track down some of those individuals. You know, we talked to experts in policing. So it was a very complicated project, but we made a list of who we wanted to talk to. And look, we had no idea what direction we were going to go, right? We didn't know if this was going to be 2 episodes. We didn't know if this was going to be 5 episodes. We had no idea what the storylines were going to be. So what happened is we took about 20 interviews, right? We interviewed maybe 20 to 25 people. And we took all of their interviews and we transcribed the interviews, right? We have a program where we put the video into the system and it spits out a transcript of every question and answer from that interview. So once everything was transcribed, I had to, you know, it was me and another producer. There were 2 producers. That was me and my colleague. His name is Nick. You know, Nick and I read all of the interviews, and we just looked for themes, right? What are some common themes? What are people talking about? What are the common threads across these interviews? How can we group the common themes in people's answers and create a storyline for each episode? And so that's kind of what we did. I'll provide this link in the chat, but episode 1, right? Episode 1, for example, uh, you know, go back to 2020 of January, right? Before the pandemic. What was happening? What was the mood in LA or in early 2020? Does anybody remember? I'm just curious to know what happened in early 2020 in LA before the pandemic that really affected people in a major way. Does anybody remember that?
I would say Kobe Bryant's death. That's one thing I can remember for sure.
Yes, you are so right. Kobe Bryant's death was a major story in LA. I believe it was in January, right? The pandemic hit. I think the first coronavirus case was in March. In fact, look, here's a fun fact. Fun fact. I was producing in Seattle on a Saturday morning, right? I was producing on a Saturday morning. It was in March. My show was over around 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. And it was about 9:45, maybe 9:30. Breaking news. The US just confirmed its first COVID case. So I'm getting ready to end my show. I'm ready to go home and you know, see my wife and kids and you know, do whatever. And the next thing you know, the White House announces its first COVID case, and it gets even more dramatic from there, right? So after we heard that it was the first COVID case in the U.S., we found out that the first COVID case was in the Seattle area, right? It was in a county. It was called Snohomish County. It's a county just north of Seattle. That's where the first COVID case was in the US. So here I am producing the news on a Saturday morning, and the White House calls a news conference. Uh, Trump and Mike Pence, they walk out, Dr. Fauci and all the other cabinet members walk out, and they have a press conference that goes on for a couple of hours. So, you know, it was a crazy morning, and so I guess you could say I was a producer, or I produced. I was one of the first producers to cover COVID in the U.S. So that was a pretty crazy time. But even before we got to COVID, Kobe Bryant's death really shook everyone. So in the first episode of Rising Up, we covered, it's really important that we give stories context. I mean, because there are multiple ways to start a story, right? You can kind of just jump right in, right? You can dive in head first, or you can prepare people for what's to come, right? You can set the scene, you can have some rising action, you can have some tension. And so for us in episode 1, we wanted to really set the mood for what LA was experiencing before COVID. So Kobe Bryant's death, people were reacting to that. People were really still dealing with losing such a legend here in LA. And then 2 months later, suddenly there's a rush to buy toilet paper, and there's COVID, and there's shutdowns, and people are remoting from home. And so episode 1 was really about setting the tone. I'll play a little bit here, actually, just so you can see what we did if you haven't seen it yet. There may be some ads to see, of course. That's the new model for journalism now, is to make you watch an ad online before you get to your video. I'm not going to play the whole thing. It's kind of long, but I just want to play a little bit of how we set the scene for episode 1. If it plays. While that's spinning, if it does play, or if you watched on your own, you'll see that we start with, oh, here we go.
It's important not only to end police brutality, but children that we can stand up.
It continues to go on every day, even when it's not caught on camera.
Maybe my internet.
I have never seen a man die on camera until I saw George Floyd.
We were always able to be more. They had your neon out there.
Another night of violent and destructive protest. That pressure cooker could not withstand any more pressure.
Just absolute lawlessness right now.
Why are you taking all of this?
There are thousands of protesters in the streets of Los Angeles who are rightfully angry. And then you have people like this who are instead acting lawlessly and are stealing.
What are y'all doing? What are y'all doing? Y'all doing nothing. Because that's not going to bring my brother back at all.
I was willing to risk my life, and every other protester had that same mindset.
They're putting this lady in handcuffs.
Injustice y'all did to us years ago.
Can we all get along?
You guys are doing to our young black men and our young black women.
I believe I witnessed a murder.
Which officer were you referring to?
The officer sitting over there.
Chauvin did exactly what he had been trained to do.
We witnessed history. We lived through history. We are going to tell these stories to our children and grandchildren.
We obviously need to be heard. Black lives matter. We understand that all lives matter, but they can't all matter until Black lives matter.
in LA, there's always huge news stories because we're in such a huge area. You know, people think of LA, but you know, we cover Los Angeles County, Orange County, Riverside County, Santa Barbara County, Ventura County. Each one of those locations on their own could have its own TV station.
So just so you all are, I'm going to stop every now and then to kind of add something to what you're looking at. So this is Phil Schumann. He's a Fox 11 reporter, and he's actually talking to me. I was the one who interviewed Phil Schumann for this docuseries. He's looking at me, but there's another camera. There's a photographer off to the side shooting him at an angle. And that was the style. That was the production style we were going for with this docuseries. We wanted the subjects. We wanted the people who we were interviewing to tell the story. There is no narration. There is no host. All of the interviews, they're the ones who are telling the story. And that makes the production process a little bit more complicated because you have to be very selective with the sound bites that you choose. You have to make sure you ask the right questions, right? We want open-ended questions so that people can elaborate as much as possible because, again, they're the ones who are telling the story. So Phil Schumann, as you can see, you know, he sets the tone, right? LA is a big city. It's a big area. We have lots of counties, lots of news. And I start to ask him about other stuff here. So let's listen a little bit more.
There's always a lot going on.
2020 is that year we will never forget, starting out, of course, with the loss of Kobe Bryant.
January 26th, the Kobe Bryant helicopter crash.
So we are looking right now at live coverage of the scene. I'm going to have a tough time with this coverage because you're looking at this helicopter that has gone down with 5 people on board. And when the word came in, for me, it was Kobe Bryant might be on board.
I have to go talk to a team before a game and tell them to quit.
It was just devastating. It was so sad, and the entire country mourning, and especially my hometown. And so it was difficult.
All right, you are looking live from Skyfox at LA Live. It's amazing, even in the last hour, Christine, how much that crowd has.
So I'm going to jump around here. So we set the tone with Kobe, and then
I think that,
you know, we have some build up to COVID hitting.
No. What happened there is not okay. When I woke up the morning that I found out about George Floyd, my phone was blowing up because people were saying, "Have you seen this yet?" And I remember.
So just another quick production tip, everybody. Phil Schumann, that interview was conducted at the station. So him and I were sitting in the same room. For Ryan Tillman, who you're looking at now, who's with the Chino Police Department, this was done virtually. So he is at an office. I was at home. Ryan Tillman is actually looking at me through an iPad. The photographer is in the room with Ryan Tillman, recording him talking to me through an iPad. So a lot of the interviews were actually conducted that way, via iPad and Zoom. But you would never know that, right? Because, you know, we're supposed to, you know, make it look a professional and, you know, make it look good. So just a little thing about that too.
Specifically laying in my bed watching this video of the officer, Derek Chauvin, you know, with his knee on George Floyd's back, and for over 8 minutes and not moving as George Floyd pleaded for his life and said he couldn't breathe. And I never forget this feeling. It made me feel for a split second of time ashamed to wear the badge and carry the gun that I have on my hip.
And I thought I've seen it all. You know, I thought.
One of the, I see one of my students here in the room. How you doing, James? James, this is going to sound very familiar to you because just Monday night we talked about ethics and making some ethical decisions. And I'm going to stop share for a moment. One of the one of the most brought up conversations during that docu-series production was how many times should we or should we not show Derek Chauvin's neck knee into the neck of George Floyd. Um, that conversation came up quite a bit. Do we freeze it? Do we freeze the video? Do we show a few seconds? Do we not show it at all? If we do show it, should we take out the screams of George Floyd calling for help? I mean, what do we do? I mean, so that conversation came up quite a bit. And at the end of the day, we all decided that let's be very, very conservative with how we use the video. Let's only use it when absolutely necessary. Because by that time, we think people have seen the video, right? We felt like people have seen it or they've heard about it. So we were very, very creative in how we used that video. If you watch any of the other episodes, you'll notice that we zoom in on Derek Chauvin's face without showing the knee. There were some other places where we got creative. We want to make sure that we minimize harm, right? I mean, that's really important for us as journalists is to minimize harm whenever possible, not just for the families who are the subject of the stories, but we want to minimize harm for the viewers as well. So, if anyone was going to be offended by the video or hearing the screams, we did not want to do that. And so we went on to produce 5 episodes of this, and it aired one day each week. The last episode was probably the most challenging because that same week a verdict came in, or just I think within a few days there was a verdict. And so how do we end the series with a verdict or not a verdict? If Derek Chauvin was acquitted, we did expect more protests. So how were we going to incorporate any more protests into the final episode? So that was a challenge as well. And one of the other conversations that we had, and which is playing out in newsrooms across the country, is how do we incorporate digital media? How do we incorporate social media into our coverage, right? We can't just think about what goes on television anymore. We have to think about what goes on the internet. We have to think about what goes on social. How do we, integrate digital into our coverage? And we did that by, as you can see, all of the episodes are online, right? Because everybody can't see. Everyone's not home at 6:30 in the evening. Some people are driving, some people are working. I mean, everyone is not sitting at home at the same time to watch a show. And so, as you can see, we pushed everything to our website. After each episode on air, we told people they could go here to read more. We have exclusive interviews that are not on broadcast on our website. I mean, if you think about it, if I'm interviewing someone for an hour and I only use a half hour of what they said, what am I doing with the other half hour? If the entire interview is good, but I can only use 30 minutes of it, why not put the other 30 minutes online for people to watch the raw and unedited interviews? And so we were able to do some of that. We had some digital shows, some post-live interviews. We have this interactive timeline as well that just kind of walks people through the different events that led up to George Floyd, and kind of helps put things in context. So this is all strategic. This was all part of our plan as well. I'm not a digital producer. I was not that involved in producing the content that goes on our website. I'm primarily a broadcast person, but I was certainly involved in the conversations about what what content is available and what information should be posted online. I'm going to pause there for a moment. Are there any questions about Rising Up and the George Floyd docuseries before I move on to something else? I can take a couple of questions about producing that series, or just anything in general for a moment.
This is your chance, everyone. Ask your questions. Dr. Day is here and being so generous. You could, I think we're a small enough group, you could just unmute if you have a question.
Yeah, that works for me too.
Yeah.
I guess I have a bit of a professor.
Sure.
I don't know if it's I guess it's a question or just an enlightenment on, I saw how you go from the Kobe to the pandemic and George Floyd. Like, how do you work those sort of transitions? Like, yeah.
Well, I think part of the transition comes from in your questioning of the subjects. Look, the good thing about pre-producing a project like this, well, let me back up. So when I produce my show for the 7 o'clock hour of Good Day LA, that's live, right? It's kind of hard to predict what's going to happen live on television. I mean, I never know what the show's going to do once we hit the air, right? For something like this that's pre-produced, that can be edited and planned weeks ahead of time, you can craft your questions with people so that they help you make those transitions a lot smoother. For example, there's an anchor in episode 1. His name is Alex Michelson. He was kind of that bridge from Kobe to COVID, right? So Phil Schumann and Christine Devine, they helped set the tone for Kobe, and then we brought in Alex Michelson, and we kind of said to him, okay, here's what we're doing early on in the episode. Now we're going to ask you about COVID. Can you help us transition, or can you kind of answer the question in a way that helps us pivot from Kobe to COVID? So that's kind of what we did in this particular series, but there are many ways to do it. I think the best way is to just come from asking the right questions and preparing the subjects to kind of give you what you want, if that makes sense, James. You're muted, James, if you're trying to say something. I don't know if you are.
No, I was saying, okay, yeah, I think you're just like asking the right questions to sort of.
I mean, look, I'll tell you this. Whenever I knew that I had an interview coming up for this project, I would probably spend at least an hour or two preparing for the interview. Mm-hmm. And depending on who it was, I could spend a couple of days. You know, you have to really know who you're talking to. You kind of have to know what is their expertise, what's in their wheelhouse for this project. Why are they a part of this? And you know, so your research can really help you when it comes to questioning your folks. I do not recommend walking into a project like this and just asking questions without any preparation. So my co-producer had notes. I had notes. It was quite a complicated process to get this done. So yes, asking the right questions will help you get the best transitions.
Okay.
Anyone else before I move on to the next project that was completed recently? All right, well,
I'm sorry, I was gonna ask.
Ana Luisa, welcome.
I just want to ask, what's the difference between, well, besides the obvious compared to print and then broadcast, are the times when it comes to publishing it the same, or do you have less time considering that it's more on demand?
When you say publishing, you mean the docuseries on broadcast versus online?
I guess I'm gonna refer more to like when you're broadcasting anything online.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, is it a lot? Are you more on deadline compared to when it's on print?
Not necessarily. You know, I mean, look, when I first started producing, it was all about getting something on television first, right? It was, you know, I've worked in newsrooms where the internet or the website came second to TV. And now, you know, 20 or so years later, it's completely changed. I think both television and print and websites have deadlines no matter what the story is. I mean, I sometimes get breaking news alerts from an app or a website before it even appears on television. Um, I found out that the Omicron variant was in California this morning from my phone. It wasn't on television first. It was a push alert to my phone. It was on our website. Um, so I think the deadlines are equally important, especially when it comes to breaking news or urgent news. You want to get that information out really, really, really quickly. I do think the broadcast side might have I think deadlines might be a little bit more urgent on the broadcast side, only because you have to, you know, once the program is over before your newscast, you have to go on air no matter what. So those stories better be written. The anchors better be in their seats. The reporters better be at the live location, because once that show starts, once the computer switches to Good Day LA, we need to be ready. The websites and digital, they don't have that pressure like the broadcast side, right? So there's deadlines are important for both, but I would say they're probably more significant for television, only because of the commercials and um, you know, you're live, right? So if you're live, you got to give people something to see.
All right, thank you for that.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Okay, the most recent project, I just want to talk briefly about this most recent project. The most recent project was the Magic Johnson. Look, I'm a Magic Johnson fan. I'm a Lakers fan. I was so pumped about doing this one. In fact, I remember when I was 12 years old going to the Magic Johnson basketball camp. You know, I went to the Pat Riley basketball camp when I was 12, and I was really excited to do this. So Magic Johnson, this year marks 30 years since he announced his HIV diagnosis. And again, this project started several weeks early, right? We knew this anniversary was approaching, and so we decided to put together a docuseries, right? We had no idea where the series would take us. We thought we were just going to do one episode. Honestly, we thought we were just going to talk to a few key stakeholders, right? Magic Johnson told us no, he didn't want to do it, not because he didn't like the idea. Apparently, he is working on a Netflix special, And so he was not allowed to talk to anyone else about his story until the Netflix project was over. So Magic Johnson had told us no, we didn't know who we were going to speak with. But we got lucky, everybody. We got so lucky. My manager, who's very amazing. I mean, he's such a big thinker. He was the executive producer of this project. He reached out to Pat Riley. He reached out to Dr. Anthony Fauci. Know what's funny? People only think of Dr. Fauci as the COVID doctor, right? Right? I mean, most people only associate Dr. Fauci with COVID. But believe it or not, Dr. Fauci really got his name and earned his honors for being an AIDS expert. He was at the forefront of the AIDS awareness, the campaign to raise awareness in the early 80s, mid 80s. And so we got Dr. Fauci, we got some former Lakers players, AC Green, Byron Scott, Maxine Waters. So we were able to get a lot of important voices in this project, and we were able to knock out 2 episodes of When Magic Shocked the World. This segment here you're looking at is something that I produce for digital only. Again, we talked to approximately 15 people, 15 to 20 people. Again, same process. What are the themes? What are the common terms? What do all of these interviews have in common? And one thing that I noticed is that everyone had something positive to say about Cookie Johnson, Magic Johnson's wife. And so I said to myself, I said, you know what? We're kind of overlooking Cookie Johnson here, everybody. We should probably do a segment just on her and why so many people say she's the real hero. We should do a segment on her commitment. What role did she play in Magic's retirement and his comeback? And let's give her some recognition for sticking with Magic through all these years. And so I produced a segment on Cookie Johnson here. Again, I'll put this in the chat right now. I produced the segment on Cookie, and it turned out to be amazing. The docuseries of When Magic Shocked the World, it really touched a lot of people. Look, Rising Up, the George Floyd docuseries, was amazing, but I often tell people there's no divisiveness when it comes to Magic. You know, when it comes to Magic Johnson, I mean, how can you not like Magic? Who doesn't like Magic? What's the controversy over Magic Johnson? I didn't see one, and so I just felt that the Magic Johnson docuseries was going to really resonate with people, and it did. We were very strategic in where and when it aired. We actually aired this docuseries about a week or 2 before the actual anniversary, and that was very intentional. We aired it during the World Series. We were hoping the Dodgers, right? So the Dodgers were playing the Braves during that series. I was just really praying and hoping that the Dodgers go to the World Series, because I knew that Game 1 and Game 2, the Magic Johnson docuseries was going to air after the game. We would have hit the jackpot if Dodgers were in the series, because that means more viewers, right? The World Series was on Fox 11, and if the Dodgers were in it, that meant a lot of eyeballs on the game. And usually, once the game is over, viewers tend to stick around to watch the post game, or TV viewing habit says that most people, when they're watching something in the evening and they go to bed for the night, they tend to leave the TV on that channel. So we were hoping that we could capitalize off of the Dodgers being in the World Series so that we could get a lot of people watching the series. But the Dodgers lost, but regardless, we still had a lot of people tuned in to the World Series. Episode 1 of Magic aired during Game 1. Episode 2 aired during after Game 2 of the World Series. So that was a business and a very strategic move on our part to produce that series in time for the World Series game. And so just kind of going back to, I want to go back to my screen here in a moment. We did some exclusive digital content. This Cookie Johnson segment is exclusively online. Here are the 2 episodes if you care to watch. Digital, we had to incorporate digital and social media some kind of way. We have exclusive episodes. We have bios on people who were in the piece, right? We have raw interviews for people to click on. So after every episode, we continue to tell people, hey, you can watch more on our website. And so, we identified all of these folks. Again, who can weigh in, right? Who has the most knowledge about this issue? Who can speak to what happened during that announcement, Magic's impact, right? Phil Schumann, he's been around for a very long time. He was reporting in LA during the announcement. So was Laura Diaz. Councilman Marquise Harris Dawson represents South LA, parts of South LA, where Magic Johnson has businesses. So we also talked about his impact on the community. So I personally reached out to Marquise Harris Dawson's office to see if he would play a part in the project, and he said yes. This is Pat Rowley. Pat Rowley is in Miami for this interview. He's actually talking to me. This is via Zoom. He's talking to me on Zoom. I recorded the interview with Pat Rowley. My co-producer, Nick, spoke to Gary Vitti and Diane Cannon. So again, we put raw interviews on our website to complement the broadcast option for people as well. So again, those are 2 projects, 2 of the biggest projects that I've been working on this year, in addition to my daily producing of news. James, I bet you didn't even know that about me, did you?
I had no idea.
What about you, Ana Luisa?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was holding out, right? I've been holding out in class every Monday.
Just when I thought I was working hard enough, turns out.
Well, look, I try not to make it about me in class all the time. I mean, I kind of gave you a taste of what I do, but yeah, no. In addition to my daily producing of the news, these are just 2 of the projects I've been working on. In fact, I'm working on something else right now, but I can't talk about it. But there are some more projects coming up at the station, and when that time comes for the air date, I'll let all of you know. And yeah, it's been fun. Any questions? I have 10 minutes. Any questions for me about just news in general, what I do, what
we could go more than 10 minutes, Dr.
Well,
Day.
okay, sure. That's fine with
but
me.
I want to respect your time for sure.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah,
I have a question, Dr. Day.
Sure.
how do you, as a, between all the things you do, and you wear so many hats, and then you have also a child at home and a family, and how do you, first of all, how do you manage all of it and give it your all? And I know from teaching that you do, and I see in, you know, your other lives. And then how does teaching fit in with all this? Like, I know you said you love teaching, so I'm just curious in terms of journalism, teaching, dad.
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. I get that question often because I do wear a lot of hats. You know what? I was actually teaching before I started producing news. So when I left Cal State Long Beach, I was a substitute teacher for LA Unified. My mother was a teacher. She just retired as a former principal. My grandmother was a principal for LA Unified. So I think teaching is just in my blood and just something that I like to do. So I started teaching for LA Unified on my, you know, during my journey in journalism. And when I got to Seattle, a professor began to invite me to be a guest speaker to his students about producing. So every quarter I would go to his class and talk to students about producing. And next thing you know, I had a class of my own. And so, you know, when you care about two things equally, you make time and you figure it out. Um, I've been fortunate enough as well to produce the morning news, which is overnight. So I'm gone from 1 a.m. to 10 a.m., right? Um, so when I have a class in the afternoon or in the evening, it's completely doable because I'm home and I've gotten my nap for the day. Um, you know, I have a very patient and understanding wife who plays a huge part in helping out with the children. But you know, look, I don't overextend myself. So look, if I'm teaching once or twice a week, that's certainly doable. But I just can't not do it for some reason. It's so hard to not be involved in both some kind of way. Um, so that I've been kind of doing. I've had parallel careers, so to speak, and you just find a way when you care about something so much. Yeah. Anyone else?
What, which film was more challenging to make out of the three docuseries?
I would probably say, I mean, look, even though the George Floyd series had 5 episodes, um, we had a shorter amount of time for the Magic Johnson series, right? The World Series aired at the end of October, I believe, and the interviews started in September. So we had a very short window to get everything done. Also, too, for Magic Johnson, we had a very difficult time getting access to video. The NBA makes it very difficult to use their game footage. So any Laker game footage that we had from the early 90s was off limits. So imagine producing a docu-series about Magic Johnson, but you can't use any Magic Johnson highlights. That was the challenge for us. And so we ended up having to pay for a couple of photos in order to get the copyright usage. So believe it or not, I would probably lean more towards the Magic Johnson series as being the most difficult, even though it only ended up being 2 episodes, just for, you know, legal rights to footage, the shorter window, the, you know, contacting some of the more high profile people. Um, you know, I look, when I teach reporting and production, I tell students all the time, the hardest and the most frustrating part of producing will be getting people to respond to you, right? Requesting interviews. right? Proposing, you know, why they should be a part of this. And so that was very difficult. I have a question here. What was in the chat? Heidi says, what was your favorite interview or story you covered? My favorite interview from the projects I've produced thus far, I would probably say, I would probably lean towards Laura King, Rodney King's daughter. For Rising Up, I was able to interview Laura King about her father and what she remembered from the day he was beaten, from the riots. And so she was very enlightening and had a lot to say. So I would probably go with Laura King as my favorite from these projects. I mean, look, as a producer, I don't normally get to do interviews. I mean, that's usually for reporters. So this is not something I normally do. I mean, my job is normally to give people assignments to go interview others, right? That's normally how it works. But in this case, I had the chance to interview these people myself. So I would say Laura King. Jerry's asking, is there a budget limit? I mean, yes and no. Everyone who produced and worked on the projects work for the station. So they're already employees for the station. You're not hiring anybody from the outside. If there's any extra money spent, it may come with overtime or travel if people have to work, you know, extra hours to edit or to get the interviews done. You know, we did pay for photos for the Magic Johnson docuseries. We were very careful not to spend too much money on the rights to certain photos. So there is some budget, but as far as personnel and technology and equipment, that's already at the station. So there was no extra money spent on that. Brittany is asking, as a Laker fan, what was it like talking to Pat Riley? I was nervous. I was super nervous to talk to Pat Riley. I mean, he only gave us 20 minutes because he had another meeting to go to. And when he logged on, there he was in his office. And, you know, I just calmed down and I asked my questions, and he's a very spiritual person. He's a man of faith, and a lot of what did not make it to the docuseries, I wish people could see, because he talks a lot about positive thinking, positive energy, and he was awesome. I really enjoyed talking to him.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Day.
All right.
Maybe that seems like a natural end.
Sure.
Are there any last questions, last call, or? Heidi says thank you. I think we all should say thank you. That was really just so lovely and open-hearted, and I appreciate how much of the back end you talk about, how much of the details that, you know, you really don't know just from seeing a series.
Yeah, no, it's what you see on TV. It takes mountains to move sometimes in order to make it happen. So it's quite the process. So I'm happy to share it.
Yeah, what a privilege, everyone. Thank you. And thank you everyone for being here.
Yeah, thank you all. I appreciate that. Thanks for listening. I'm an adjunct on campus, so if you need to reach out to me, feel free.
We're lucky to have you. Thank you, everyone. I'm gonna